So there are a number of things that they do in order to eliminate figures in the 1960s, like Martin Luther King and RFK. And RFK was on his way to the presidency. But when you're already in the presidency, a number of things need to happen, and that whole Secret Service apparatus needs to be on some level compromised in order for you to accomplish this. So that's why the Kennedy assassination is the ultimate template, and why there's a strange overhang from it, because there's so many strange documents that had to be filed in relation to it. You know, the FBI filing fake documents, the CIA with all their lies over the years, and the CIA being right in the heart of that assassination, with their personnel heavily identified as being behind it. So we have to understand the levels of assassination. And so when somebody's going to take out a presidential candidate or a leader, it's a certain type of an exercise for these people and for these groups. But when they are going for the presidency, there's this whole mechanism that has to be in place, and the people on the other side need to be ready to shift. What we're looking at in the Trump attempts are something right between the presidential assassination and the leadership level, because he's on his way to assume the presidency again. And it's interesting in just kind of regular world news watching this election, because it's clear that the momentum is on the side of Trump, especially since RFK got behind him, and RFK Jr. and Trump working together. That is the alliance that is an incredible breakthrough. Many of the kind of political prognostications, because what was going on there in the background in this election was the hope on the Biden side that they could somehow split that throw the incumbent out vote by utilizing Kennedy in certain states. And instead, it's all been turned against them, so much so that, you know, they went from keeping Bobby off the ballot in certain states to now making sure he stays in now that he's behind Trump, so it can sort of peel a few votes off of Trump here and there. And I don't know if anyone was watching the Oprah special with candidate Kamala Harris, but this was, you know, I mean, first of all, it's interesting about Oprah because all the magic that was there and all, you know, the pizzazz and everything else just seems to have dissipated. And it's just, I think it's from living in these false worlds, you know, this kind of billionaire World Economic Forum world. And also the amount of public credibility that they lost in pushing the whole COVID op, et cetera. So we look at people, you know, even the average person in the public looks at people like Oprah in a very different light, I would say.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. And that's our friend Daniel on Dark Journalist. And again, you should never kind of believe anything. Like me. Don't believe me, you know? Don't believe a word I say. Just because I'm not, you know, anything other than a griot, here to tell you a story, right? I tell you stories, right? And then we have a nice little chat on the live chat here. And, you know, I want to hear from you guys. I want to know what you think. My assessment of what's going on is that, you know, the hidden hand, you know, the guys who have been running everything since Thucydides, right? And they're always in the background. They never step up. They manipulate through getting other people to do other things, right? It's never, they're never doing anything, right? But they do everything, right? And so the war in Ukraine, you know, it is a staged, scripted soap opera. The only problem is that people, you know, almost 1 million Russian young people are dead, you know, from Russia's ineptitude of fighting this war. And you can't be that stupid. You can't be that stupid being the second most powerful military force on the planet, you know? You can't be that stupid, right? You can't take a whole, you know, bunch of armored equipment, tanks, motorized mortars, armored personnel carriers, drive them into Ukraine all the way halfway to Kiev, and then run out of gas and not have a plan to bring gas along with you, along with a few lunch boxes. So those guys sat there, and then Ukrainian sharp tip of the sword went and shot a few javelins at that line and took out, the vehicles at the front of the line and the vehicles at the back of the line. So everybody in the middle of the line, the hundreds of vehicles couldn't move anything. So people got out and ran away. And then the Ukrainians just towed all of those tanks and equipment into a garage and refitted them. And that one episode gave the Ukrainians more armor than they had when the war started, right? And Russia did that a number of times, gave them equipment and you name it. And for a small, little, teeny military force, 1/10 the size of the Russian force, 1/100th of the output of its economy, right? 1/10 the size of the population, to be able to not only keep Russia at bay, but absorb the punches that they're getting, and going into Russia themselves, right? This is like, and we who keep giving them weapons to keep the war going don't give them what they need to finish the job. Meaning, Ukraine at this point, if they had the ATACMS and the permission to go knock out every air base that could literally attack Ukraine, which would be under the things of war. Yeah, I mean, look how nice the Ukrainians treated all those people. When they went into Russia, they didn't rape and kill the public. They, helped them get on a bus and go back, get away, right? Yep, I'm back. And so the that's that. And what I'm seeing, what's going to happen is what the hidden hand wants is the total collapse of Russia, right? So Disney can come and go in and buy it 10 cents on the dollar, and they can, because Russia's the only thing Russia has is oil and gas, right? And Ukraine has been hitting all the distribution spots way, way up north, like 800 miles from the border, right? And taking out refineries and taking out pipelines. And they're hitting these distribution points that take the oil from their deep northern fields, right? And if you stop the pumping of oil from those wells, those thousands of wells, they will die because oil has a good deal of water in it, right? And so if it's just hanging out in that pipe, it's going to freeze. And that'll be the end of the wellhead and the well itself and the pipe. And this happened in 91. And it took 20 years of Western technology and money to, get, you know, Russia's oil pumping at the levels that it was before the war. And so then they get knocked back. And Ukraine is just going after every one of those wells because that's the best thing they can do at this time. And if they force the stoppage of oil and gas, that means they don't really have to blow up the power stations like Russia is blowing up Ukraine power stations. And, you know, Russia has probably killed somewhere between 10 and 40,000 innocent civilians, right? And so far, Ukraine really hasn't gone that way. There have been a few here and there just because the luck of the draw, but they haven't been going after them, right? And Russia has just been throwing their young men into the meat grinder, at Ukraine, and that's kind of what's happening there in the Gaza Strip and that whole area. You know, in the Bible and anywhere else, it never said that Israel was a state. No, you read the Old Testament, the Torah, you realize that God is when He's saying Israel, and He didn't talk about the Hebrew nation as Israel until Exodus. Up until then, they were just a bunch of chuckleheads roaming around doing, not quite doing what God wanted. And no one knew what God wanted, really, right? Up until the Ten Commandments. And that was part of the problem. He was just always complaining, right? So he was, basically Donald Trump, and we don't know what that God looked like. See, we don't even know who that God was. We don't even know what God we have, because no one, or not no one, not many folk are truly, uh, serving God in love. And that is the covenant that if you read the Torah, that's what it's about. God's co-creation in love with us. And we, all the humans, because we all came from Adam and Eve, there aren't just Jewish humans. No, we're all Israel. Think on that one, right? And so we have more in common. We have more to gain by working with each other than being grumpy and going after each other. And our politics is just a theatrical piece. Kamala, that thing they had that big glitzy whoop de doo with Oprah. Maybe they should run Oprah as president, and maybe next time. And because she so overshone Cammy, it was like unbelievable. And Donald is just, Fruit Loops and his JD, what's his name? Um, this is the best we can do, please, And everyone who seems to, pony up to that loses their mind. Who's the black historian slash scholar who's was at Harvard, and he was a righteous dude, but as soon as he started running for president, it was like what? So it's very that's I mean I've pretty much done everything one can do except for two things, brain surgery and running for elected office. Say I'm not going to do that, right? And the only kind of surgery I did was when I was an EMT. I didn't do any. I just did things to stop the bleeding and to get the person alive to the hospital, right? So the ICU people could um, take care of it. So anyway, what questions do we have, right? Um, what should we be doing, right? What we should be doing is enjoying, appreciating through humility what our lives are about. And our lives should be not about ourselves, but about the we in me, how we can help other people. Right? And that is um, the message for today is like, how can we help other people? How can we be together? How can we, everything we do? I mean, nobody's perfect, but with conscious intent of love's co-creation, if you keep that in your mind, I go to these three churches and everyone is so stuck on their, you know, um, scriptural truth, right? And, basically, in the beginning, all these guys liked my intellectual pursuit of understanding um, the King James Bible, right? And so, but and I never said, "Oh, look, this is where it is." No, my major thesis was God is unconditional love and Jesus is unconditional forgiveness, and if we, uh, live in co-creation with those two forces, we will be doing God's will. And people, but what about the scriptures? Blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, they're great to read because when you read them, they are frequencies that get inside of you and vibrate you to the point where you can feel God's love, right? You can feel God's humility and pathos, right? And what are we supposed to be doing with that? That's the storyline. So this is a good point where people could jump in and, you know, maybe say something. I have to. I'm going to go do something, a bodily function, and. I'll let you listen.
Like Oprah in a very different light, I would say. And her trying to put Kamala over the top, it was very interesting because the only thing she managed to do was upstage her. And Harris just, she's not ready for prime time. And her giving these speeches that are supposed to be ready to go, they had the governor of Michigan jumping up. Of course, she's always wearing her Fonzie jacket, right? She's got the leather jacket on, indoors or outdoors, doesn't matter. And green leprechaun pants. That was interesting too. Hey, whatever floats your boat. But it is interesting to me because they were jumping up and they were like, "Yeah, we're going to save democracy and all that." And they had Oprah running around going, "Kamala." It just wasn't flying. Just like it's interesting if you really trace the magic in this election. The real magic is Bobby and Trump in Arizona announcing that they're working together. That's where you can really feel the momentum. Since then, has really pulled in that direction. And this repeated attempts on Trump's life is a group working in that system. We saw this warned about very early on because all of the legal attacks weren't quite sticking. And that group that's operating in the deep state doesn't want Trump around to prove them, in defeat again. This is definitely something that they're not looking forward to. So they're taking, they wanted to take first off this idea that they would bump him off, and then they could decry the whole tone that was there and how we should all hold hands. And then they expected, since Trump didn't even announce his VP at that point when Crooks shot at him, which is still a very mysterious case, and I'll get into certain aspects of that as well. But I've pointed them out here in a series of episodes, including the Patsy profile, that Crooks and all the things about that incident should never have been allowed to happen. From Crook's position on the roof, his visibility to the crowd, even the crowd taking pictures of him, he was allowed to be up there. This is one of those let it happen on purpose episodes, along with the fact that there were many doppelgangers operating there who looked exactly like Crooks, who were walking around. So the Secret Service guy could be like, "Hey, that's Crooks over there. He's got the T-shirt and the hair and the flat face, as it were. And he's heading off into the woods while the other one is climbing up on the roof." So we still don't have the correct answers, but I thought what might be a kind of proverbial hardcore line in the sand was when DeSantis, the governor of Florida, who's trying to get back into Trump's good graces after running against him in the primary, said, "No, you know what? You're not taking the perp, in this case, Ryan Ruth, out of our jurisdiction via the FBI, because the FBI were really after him." Remember, this is the same FBI that had Crooks cremated before anybody could take a real good look at him. So what happened in the case of Ruth is quite fascinating because we're right in the middle of a tug of war going on there. And DeSantis is saying, "We want to talk to this guy. We want to keep him in our custody. We want the FBI gumming up the works here. What's going on?" How did this guy, who had a number of different charges against him over the year, never do any time in prison? Stolen goods, possessing machine guns, weapons of mass destruction, and all this stuff, and yet no jail time. It's just a mystery, isn't it? Well, it's very interesting also, along with his world tours, he has a lot in common with other assassins that we've covered in this program, including the attempted assassin of President Reagan, John Hinckley Jr., in 1981, and John Lennon's assassin. These are also people who had this enormous network of traveling the world, as Oswald did. It's a a kind of a benchmark or footprint, and we'll see why that's so coming in here, and we'll see what on earth does the UFO file have to do with this. Well, it certainly does. And I'll explain that in a minute. Everyone, you're watching the Dark Journalist show. This is Assassination in the UFO File, a special report for you here. And like I said, we'll go to about 10 o'clock with you here tonight, and we'll take your questions for the last half hour before I go any further. Miss Olivia, you're up.
Gladio Maxis says the media and certain political factions are spreading stories about Iran's involvement in an attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Marta Allen says, all I know is thank God Trump is still with us.
It's incredible. It is incredible. So, in particular, with the Crooks assassination,
I gotta go do some more stuff.
Crooks they got rid of immediately. I think that this guy was also meant to be rubbed out by that Secret Service fire. But the idea that he got in his golf course and then hung out, in a yellow shirt for 12 hours on the golf course and no one noticed him is, what kind of Secret Service is that? It doesn't make any sense. Even basic security would cover that. So we're seeing right off the bat real alarm bells. Excuse me. What do you got there? Give me something.
Okay, so Mitakwe Oyasin says, given both attempted assassins of Trump have links to BlackRock, does DJ think there may be corporate intelligence operatives involved? And Janine Manchurian says, MK assets usually suicided or are killed. DJ, why do you think they took him alive? What will they use him for?
Well, they originally had to take Oswald alive because bumping him off didn't work out, So the strange incidents of him at the theater and all the rest, he wasn't supposed to be around to talk either. That's why the Ruby thing is so extraordinary and shows such a fracture in our system. Which is why that case, Professor Scott, who coined the term the deep state, calls it a malignancy in our political system. Kennedy assassination from which it has never recovered. Think about that. 60 years of this and no real public answers. I mean, that is dramatic. Of course, the many institutions that covered up his death give you the reasons. The one that is not cited enough and why we've made such a point of it here in the X series is the aerospace aspect, because it's right in the middle, in the heart of the assassination, one, and two, it's just undeniable that it was related to this advanced technology aspect and the UFO file piece. It's there, it's on the record, you can't ignore it, and it's much more palpable in terms of resources than something like the mafia, because the mafia can't make newspapers print things that they don't want to print, and the mafia can't come up with fake autopsies in the government and stuff like that. So no, it's interesting. None of those explanations ever made any sense. So when you get into aerospace, you realize you're dealing with all kinds of deep secrecy there. And when you get secrecy involved, you get black operators involved. And when they're involved in that high of a level, and remember, we're talking about the UFO file being a higher level of secrecy than atomic nuclear weapons, then you realize you're dealing with a whole faction of government that we don't know anything about. So, we think we know things about the NSA or the CIA or some of these agencies, the FBI. There are phases, there are levels inside of those institutions we know nothing about. But I always go back to the example of the National Reconnaissance Office, which was started in 1961, but the public doesn't find out about it until the 1990s. So, using that as a comparison, what institutions are there that are already active now that we won't find out about until 20 or 30 years later, if at all, that are operative in the middle of all this? So that gets us into the kind of deep territory. But where did this come from? That's why we go back to some of the unusual symbolism around the UFO file during that early era around the Kennedy assassination. We'll do a little bit of that right now. Anything else?
Red Cap Goblin says, what if MK Ultra really is just brain chips now?
Well, right. They've moved certain types of MK Ultra. Of course, they have EMK Ultra, and but it's very interesting because the thing about suggestibility, it needs to be understood because people who study hypnosis or who study marketing and things of this nature understand suggestibility. That's why when they recommend a pain reliever on television, they'll say you're going to feel better. The whole idea, oh, I'm going to feel better. Okay, I'll take it. Um, and the odds are here or there if you're actually going to feel better. But the thing is, suggestibility and those who study it make them excellent at mental manipulation. And so if you study it from the point of view of just trying to unravel it, and you'll find that some people, some of the mystery school type people like Gurdjieff and Ouspensky, really spent a long time trying to deprogram the whole war propaganda machine that was going on in the 20s and 30s. And they studied it. They wanted to understand the brainwashing then. So, as it evolves into these other technological pieces, it becomes just an easier delivery mechanism. But ultimately, the formats change, but the core is the same, and the core is suggestibility. Now, it's interesting with suggestibility because I think when they study it, and anyone can really get into this, I've studied a lot about unconscious training and why people do the things they do. But what you realize at a core level is that humanity is malleable for a reason, and that the reason is that it's evolving, and so therefore, as part of its kind of psycho-spiritual growth, you would have a suggestibility in the subconscious, and just like that you can freak somebody out by telling them they're on top of a mountain. If they have vertigo, they'll feel the same feeling, right? Or if they're watching a movie like that, there's the unconscious doesn't have guile, as it were. So there's no screen in the unconscious. And that's good and bad. It's good if you take it from a certain level because you can instruct the unconscious to do certain things. But that malleability works two ways. So the malleability of the unconscious mind and its suggestibility gives it the incredible asset of the mind working with the body based on suggestion. You're going to feel better, and things of this nature. But it also lends itself to negative suggestion as well, or to false suggestion. So there's all kinds of things that go on there. And what you'll find out when you get into
How much time we got left here? We got about half an hour, 40 minutes. There's two of you here. There's one thumbs up. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei, ALLL. Me, that's this guy right here telling you a story. So we kind of gave the little, and the one thing that no one's talking about is Sierra Leone, how ALLL, that center part of Africa that has all the minerals and the wealth, and there are all these wars going on there. Millions of people are starving to death, are getting blown up and raped and shot and killed, just for corporate greed. The two generals, the army and then the Rapid Defense Force guys, they are buddies. They've known each other since high school, and they were there propping up the oligarchy for 30 years, and then the people rebelled against them. And the army at a certain point said, okay, we're not supporting those guys. We're supporting the people. We're here to help the people. Okay, so let's all cool our heads and go back to work. And you guys figure out what kind of democratic government we're going to have. And you have your meetings and blah, blah, blah. And they did. And things went on as usual. And then the people started to realize that they were never going to have, the military was never going to let them have an election. So they started querying them, saying, "Hey, so when we're going to have oh, soon, soon." And then the army and the Rapid Defense Force, those two generals, said, these guys are getting wise to what we're doing. So why don't we just have a civil war between you and me? You, I will be over here in this town. You come over just before you bomb it. We'll get out. You'll bomb everyone in that place, and we'll go in and kill everyone who's left over, saying that it was their fault that they got bombed and blah blah blah. And we'll just continue to do that until we kill everyone here, and then all the resources will be in yours and my hands. And still, it's being pumped out. Still, this war isn't stopping the delivery of those assets, those resources, into the corporate hands. So, and there's 28 wars at least going on right now all across the world, killing millions of people, starving millions of people, and we're not really talking about it, or even the ones that are right in front of us in Ukraine and in the Gaza Strip. We're going to blow up that whole neck of the woods, right? Both these things are going to end in limited use of nuclear weapons, right? And that will be so horrific that everyone will stop in their tracks, and the new world order will be right in front of us, and we'll have the Federation. And aliens will show up and help us with new technologies so we can curb the global changes, blah, 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 blah. So that's going to be the October surprise, right? And it'll be interesting. And in certain factors, it won't be bad, right? If we were to assert our individual self to bring forth the best that each individually could do, we could navigate this thing away from the cliff. But if we just go along, allowing ourselves, as DJ just said, being manipulated through our subconscious because we're so malleable, it's pretty easy to do. But if you're in conscious intent of God's love, not so easy to do. Right? So that's why, I changed my life from what I was doing, and I wasn't any less conscious than I am today. I just said, screw it. I have a number of skill sets that wealthy people want to use. I'll make money and have a good time until I die. And I did that. And those 10 years were fun. And, they were the ultimate in hedonism, right? And that wasn't a sin, but there's a price to be paid, I gained 240 pounds. I destroyed my body. And then I died. And then I wouldn't let them cut me up like bologna. And I had to drag myself to this, to this existence, which is fine. There are a lot of things, my doctors can't believe how much is wrong with my body, but it still does a great job at moving me around, Now, I just drank and ate this poison to show you that. So I'm feeling the super duper sugar of and poison of this at the tips of my fingers, right? But I can, through God's love and co-creation, ameliorate its effect on me, right? So I had a teacher who was teaching us how we could control our bodies, our chi, that's the energy of our body. Chi is the utilization of the prana in the cellular form. And so he wanted to show us this. So we got a bottle of, we were out there getting some provisions at the in town, and we're in the supermarket, and we're buying a little this, a little that, and he gets a bottle of bleach, and we're in the supermarket, right? He goes, "See, this is real bleach. I didn't fill around with this." He opens it up, and he knocks the thing down. He drinks the whole frigging bottle of bleach, right? It's about a quart. Well, that's enough to kill you, right? Didn't even phase him, right? He closes it. He throws it into the cart, and we go and buy whatever else we buy. We're online. We buy it, and the guy at the checkout, goes, "Did you know this was empty? Do you really?" And my sensei, and wearing the orange robe and the bald head, said, "Oh, I drank that, so we're going to pay for it, but you can keep the container." And the guy was, "What?" And we all go, and so we pay for it, and we go out, and so nothing is as it seems to be, right? Um, when you are conscious with intent of love's co-creation, you can pretty much do the most amazing things. And that's all these people who do amazing things. That's what they're doing. They're in that flow. They're in that connection. They're in that uh, realization that everything that they thought was is not, but they can do this, right? So, I'm not perfect. I'm not anything except your sensei Al Bob, here to tell you a story as your griot. Uh, much time we got left here? Probably another 20 minutes. Come on. Anybody want to ask a question? Jeremy was here, and now I don't know where he's back to. So, but anyway, that doesn't matter. This show is its best when it's in you know connected dialogue through the live chat, right? So. Anyway. Mm. My dad used to be able to blow bubbles off his tongue. And I have the same gene pool in him that he has, that I can. Guess not. There's two of you there. Oh, James Mack. Small. 2 to get out my glasses and read. Here we go. Yeah, the tongue bubble thing. Yep. Similar to Ram Dash Guru, bleach bit with 600 x LSD. Yep. LSD never really, psychotropics never really affected me, because I can have that same hallucinogenic motif when I meditate, right? When I go into state, it's like having filters, like lenses, right? And when I go into state, I can put those filters looking at the world and had the same motif as psychotropic drugs. So um, the first time I ever did psychotropic drugs, I was a sophomore in high school at the Winchington School for Boys in Winchington, Massachusetts. Still there. Now it's a co-ed school. Just as Canterbury, which is the seminary I went to, is now a co-ed school. Both very bourgeois, right? Very super elite, da 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 da, right? And both schools, I was cheeky monkey in them. And but at Winchington, I had so much time on my hands, so I read a lot of books and um, and did art, theater mostly, right? Theater, poetry, um, performance stuff, right? And that's how I kind of got into college. And I also did a literary magazine there, and we got so we did all this arty stuff at our school, and we had this teacher. She was hot, and we were hot for teacher, and she was hot for us. You're not supposed to talk that way in these days, but she was. I guess she would have been arrested for you know breaking our morals, but she brought the most of us into this art world that was truly amazing. So she took us to things like um, Columbia Broadcasting competition in theater, right, and in artistic journals. We won a lot of awards, and those awards was really interesting because we never told our headmaster we were doing this. So the awards kind of just went to us and our teacher, and they never kind of sent them off to the main office, right? So we just kind of, you know, thank you very much. And one of them got to our headmaster, and he found out that we had been doing this for like 2 years, and he got very upset. So he fired all the young teachers who were really great assets to us, and filled the positions with all his old cronies who were basically senile. This one guy, for the whole, he was our history theology teacher, and just because he could speak Greek, but he forgot it. Right? I was learning Greek. I mean, I'd already learned Greek, and I kept reading Greek and trying to speak Greek, and I took it. And for a whole year, I would just kind of slink down because we had like 7 guys to a class, and we were at a big table, not at like little individual cell blocks. And so anyway, I would slide down underneath the table and tie his shoes together. And when the bell rang, we would get up, and he would get up, we'd walk out, and he'd go to walk out and he'd fall over every single day. Right. And we had to make sure that all objects that could like whack him in the head and kill him, so he would fall down, but he wouldn't hurt himself. But he did it. That's how out of it he was every single day. And maybe that's why I'm limping around today. But anyway, our headmaster, he charged our family like extra $1,000 a semester for cultural events, right? And we would every Friday we would go down to or Saturday night we'd go down to the movie theater that had burnt down, but still the projector worked and the screen was there, but there was no roof. So if it was snowing, I mean, in the wintertime, we'd had to be there with coats and gloves and hats and watching the movie. And we would get like drive-in movies, not the most recent movie, right? So he would get sometimes free tickets, and we would go see things, right? And so he got tickets at Keene State College in New Hampshire. We were right on the border to go see a show of the Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, and somebody else. I forget. Um, and so we get in this old school bus we had. There was about 25 of us. And UB Hobart, of Hobart, meat slicing machines, industrial restaurant equipment. UB, he basically said to me, "Hey, Al, put out your tongue." I put out my tongue, and he had an eyedropper, and he was Santos, the super duper pure stuff from Switzerland. He had like a gallon of the stuff and had a little eyedropper thing, and he probably put about, I don't know, 5, 6, 10 drops on my tongue. Probably one would have been enough, but so within about 15 minutes, we were driving to Keene State College, maybe 20 to 40 miles away, half hour drive, maybe an hour drive. And it's raining, and we're on 220, which is a kind of state highway. And the oncoming traffic, the light is hitting the rain on the window of the bus. And I'm like, and Hobart's going, "Hey, kind of fun, isn't this stuff?" Anyway, we go into the we pull up to the thing, and the crowd's out there, and we kind of march up to the front door. Our headmaster's there, and hands them the tickets and the letter saying that let us in. And so it's an open show. It's not We're not sitting in prescribed seats. It's like in a gigantic gymnasium, and the bleachers have been pushed back. And so and we're all wearing our prep school uniforms, and everyone else is like paisley and tie dye and long hair, and girls, just mostly women. There were a lot more girls than guys, right? And so um, we're in there, and it was a jazzy kind of band playing, the first band up, and it was and I had heard a lot of jazz by this time, I'm tripping my brains out, and I'm like. So anyway, all of a sudden, these girls kind of just come around me and just like, oh, like, and they take me away, right? And I just, and they lead me underneath the bleachers, and they have made this whole little beautiful, with pillows and lights and all kinds of things. It's like a tent that under there, it's like a bed down there, and it's like they're not wearing any clothes down there, and then they're taking my clothes off, and they're having their way. And I'm like, right? And they have nice little like electric hookah, and they stick the hose in my mouth and just breathe it. Why? Yeah. And then this girl goes, "Here, try this," and it was a whippet, nitrous oxide. And they're having their way with me while all this is going on. And I had some of the best of times in that. And so that whole show, especially when the Grateful Dead, they played for like 12 hours, just those guys, right? They were the last piece. I mean, that whole show played until the sun rose, right? And somewhere in the beginning, I mean, these girls came and grabbed me right off the bat and brought me underneath the bleachers. And I heard this commotion, and I kind of looked up, and there was my headmaster, and he was trying to like get the microphone away from Grace Slick to say, "Boys, boys, go back to the buses. I don't know what to go back to the," and he got beat up. They like grabbed him, brought him back, and just like beat the ever living snot out. And he's like, I don't know, 60 years old guy, but a real jerk. And he's cursing. You can hear he wouldn't let go of the microphone, and he's cursing up a storm. "You hippies!" And he's trying to hit them with the microphone. And the girls say, "Oh, don't bother with that." And so I don't know what happened to the headmaster, but we never got on the bus, right? So they were like sweeping us out the next morning, like 10:30 in the morning. And the girls basically, they, took me, and we split. The great when as soon as Grateful Dead ended, they split, right? I just went, and I was barely wearing my pants, and they take me out the back door, get in their car, we go down to the Dunkin' Donuts, and we, buy boxes of Dunkin' Donuts, and they take me back to their dorm, and still have their way with me, right? So anyway, around noon of the next day, I look out their dorm, and our school bus is still there, and there's guys roaming around, like, and girls take me down there, and the bus driver, he had an experience too, and so somebody of authority had grabbed him and took him and got him a lot of coffee, and so we were like, straggling, and so we get back to school 48 hours after we got on the bus. Magic bus, magic bus. That was the original magic bus. Uh, do the tongue bubble thing. Okay, I'm gonna try. Part of it, I don't have teeth. See, part of it, Nick, is you get your tongue down in that little well down there, and then you push the bubble up against your teeth. Oh no. Huh. You have to have your saliva at the right consistency. Anyway, that was one of my my tricks to show girls what a great lesbian I was. So you don't have to go along to get along. You really don't. This morning, I don't know if you captured the early morning show I had, but these guys came in, right? This guy bigger than I ever was. I mean, he was like four of me, and his legs were like 42 inches, right, in diameter, and he come. I was a Gorgo. I understand what Gorgo is, but this guy's probably in his 20s, and I didn't get Gorgo until I was in my late 50s. I was in pretty good shape up until that. I was in very good shape up until I was 40ish, right? And then I started becoming the itinerant scholar. Yes, it was fun, eh? And that's God wants us to have fun. He really does, because the only way God's going to have fun is like co-creating it with us. So all the times you're having a good time, all the time sex is like, wow, that's like God's right there cheering you on or being part of it. It's kind of what it is. Um, so all of the stuff that religion tells us, like I said, the texts are a different story because they are coded. And when you read them, especially if you read them out loud to yourself, and that's what they did, that's why in the Jewish temple, they had a cantor who would read the Torah, not the tableau or um, the C one, the real esoteric cult, Kabbalah. But they had their own cantering things here, but not amongst the crowd, right? So anyway, so don't worry about a thing. Meaning all the very strange stuff that's going on right now. And it's only going to get stranger, It's just a TV cartoon show. TV, remember Saturday Night Live? They had the guy who did the animations, TV fun show, and then the dog would grab the top of it and rip the top off, and then bingo, you would be in a reality of a skit, right? And that was those guys trying to say, hey, everything is a cartoon mayhem show, whatever they called it. And then they ripped the dog would run away with the script and grab at the top corner of the frame and pull it off, and bingo, you would be into the video of our players playing the play, right? And so what's his name? Who's the Canadian boy who does Saturday Night Live? He is just another version of the Greeks doing theater. That's all it is, right? And sometimes it really hits the pathos button, and sometimes it's just television. Uh, so yep, the tongue bubble thing. So how we doing? Are we at the red line yet? No, we probably have a good 15, 20 minutes. So Jane, I tried to send you one of my novels, and it said that it, because I just look at what the this thing says your email is, and when you email me, I send it back via that, and it says it can't find it. But I don't care. I'll figure it out sometime soon. I'm going to go visit my digital guru and have him explain it all to me. Because I try to go to a store or a phone store or some electronics place, they don't have a clue, right? Anyway, so there's three of you there. Any questions? Jane, we got about 15, 20 minutes left of battery here. Yep. And so anybody want to get into a deep conversation? Maybe the next time I do this, tomorrow I'm taking a road trip. I'm going to go visit the test of the whale, and I'm trying to expand our market. So I'm going to Asheville because I was the dude in Asheville for 10 years, from 91 to 98. I guess that's not 10 years. It felt like 10 years. But the first 7 were great. There was nobody there except really interesting artists. We did all kinds of fun stuff. If you ever went to Asheville or go on the Asheville thing, and if you were to, what do you call it, Google Bell Share. Oh, let's Google. I got Google right here. Let's see what Google does with this. Bell Share in Asheville, North Carolina. Bell Share Festival, Asheville, North Carolina. Bell Share, pronounced Bell Share, was the largest free outdoor street festival in Southeast, attracting up to 300,000 in its busiest years. Yeah. And then it got out, and we started that as a street party, on Wall Street, right? Then people, and Wall Street was great because you could block it off and it didn't stop traffic. It was kind of a dead little street, and so we did that for a year or two, and great. And we'd have like 1,000 people of our best friends, and poetry reading and music, and we'd have all these arts and crafts being sold, and food and dance, and just a grand old time. The cops didn't care, and you could almost do anything you wanted to. And then we expanded it. We did it on the street, right, for a weekend, right, and then we put up a stage, and the people on where the library and the convention center is, and the hotel, they said, why don't we, we got money. Why don't we put some money and get some real bands, and we'll put a stage up, because the hotel wanted to put people in the hotel, and etc. Right. So we did that, and that was cool. And that was about the 6th year. And then Asheville was starting to get groovy, and downtown development just took it over, right? Just took it away from us, into, we know where we represent the city, blah, 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 blah. And they did it, and they did the whole town, right? They had like 7 stages, and it was great. They had a lot of music, and that's why there's so many hotels in Asheville now, because they built them to fit all that stuff in. Now they have all this other groovy stuff going on. And down at the along the river where the art scene was, we had a collective, right? I forgot what it was called, but it was a big factory building. We rented it for like nothing, and some of us lived in it, and we had, again, lots of art shows and stuff like that. And there was this guy named Otter, homeless guy, and he was an amazing sculptor. And right under the Patton Avenue Bridge, the utility company basically dumped all its garbage there, and it's big chunks of concrete. I don't know how he moved them around, but he moved them around in such a way that he built a concrete wall around about 3 acres at the base of the Patton Avenue Bridge on the French Broad there. And he had a little town for homeless people. They had a place to go. There weren't homeless people on the street, and they were safe, and they had food, and they had shelter, and it was a big party all the time. It was really loads of fun. And so us artists kind of went down and hung with them, and we'd bring them stuff, and we'd have a great time with them. And then it got out that that was happening, and probably in 96 or 97 when they bulldozed everything out and I pushed all the homeless people further down the French Broad, right? And that was fine. And the homeless people didn't, they were further out of town, and they were towards Marshall, and um, and then I left. I left in '98, right? And um, and I could have bought a lot of real estate there. Meaning there was a time between '91 and '95 when there was still no one there. You could, like over in West Asheville, you could buy a house for $15,000, a nice house. Those houses now are going for $500,000, right? There was lots of other buildings near um, the fancy Nazi hotel um, that you could have bought for 30 grand, right? Big house. Those are going up for like 5, 10 million right now. No, I could have done that, but I already did that in Long Island, right? And it was like, eh, do I really want? And I knew that Asheville because it was like, you know, set in the mountains. They were going to move a lot of people in there. Like when I was there in '91 to '94, the general population was maybe 35 to 60,000 people, meaning not just the city, but Buncombe County, right? There's now almost 500,000 people there. And so I knew that was going to come, and it was just going to destroy the places. It has Asheville has the most poisonous drinking water and the most poisonous air because it's in a valley, and I-26 and 40 come together. 1 million cars drive through the city of Asheville every day. It's a lot of air pollution, and it's in a bowl that can't get out. Right? There are days when the sky is red and black. And the water. What happened to the water and the sewer system? Um, Asheville was the Paris of the South, and Astros and Biltmore and all the intelligentsia would go there to get away up in the mountains and like over near Waynesville. They had a beautiful electric train that went from where the railroad um, went because Astor had a railroad. His railroad car come up here. Then there was an electric train that went out to Waynesville and up into the mountains there, where they had all these big hotels up in the mountains, really beautiful. And it was when I was there was only one of those hotels left, and it was kind of a dump. Um, but the right away of that railroad's still there, right? They could put it in, but they haven't. But anyway, um, there was between '95 and '98, there were a number of people who were trying to. They realized what was going to happen with the real estate. So there was a guy, I forget his name, but he put together a land trust and tried to buy up all of the properties that were in the forest around the tops of the mountains, so not to you know really fuck up the view. And but they murdered him basically. Well, they murdered that guy, and they first set his house on fire, and the fire killed one of his kids, and he wouldn't give up, and so one time they went in and shot everyone and chopped them up, kind of like put the rest of us who were trying to save that land through land trusts was well, you kids keep doing that. This is what's going to happen to you. But they literally, you know, shot them all, the two kids, the wife and the husband and the dog in the head, and chopped them up in pieces. Anyway, that's why I left Asheville. Actually, the whole time I was in Asheville, I was sent from Cornell to Asheville to do an ethnography on the Biltmore House, right? So they could turn it into what they turned it into. Then I went to the City County Plaza, where this downtown city thing back during in the 20 while spending millions in the 20s, turning it into the Paris of the South, and then the Depression came, and the guy who did the water lines and the septic, he burnt all the documentation of where all the sewers were and the water was, and all the pipes were made out of lead and terracotta. And so, um, over that 70-year period, all those pipes cracked, and so people were drinking their sewage. And so the only thing that the water board could do is add more bleach to the water to kill the bugs, but all that did was made the bugs stronger. Killed off 90%, but the 10% that lived were like, super bugs. So once Asheville got so I had loads of friends that still stayed there, who are still there. I'm going to go visit them. And so they did buy a house, right? And they do have a nice place, but it's like they're living in the Gaza Strip of hipsters, right? And so this fish, and she took away her message. I got about 10 minutes. And so every time I go there, there was a nice hiatus between first, when my parents died in '08, up until '08. I left in '98. And for 10 years, I would go down to Florida, and I'd be in Virginia, and I'd drive down 81, then hit 26, go through Asheville, stay with my friends, and keep going. So I saw how Asheville was doing this, and we, so at '08, and I didn't go down and then I stayed in Florida for 2 years, pretty much. I would, when it got really hot in Florida, I would come up um, to my place in Virginia, and I had a lot of stuff in Virginia. I had a factory in Lynchburg, and I had some houses in not Varna, another V town. Varna's upstate New York, and I had a bunch of commercial buildings in Bedford, and I had the big school that Johnny's in, and so anyway, I had a lot of real estate. It was mostly rental stuff I was renting out, and that was great. I mean, I had a rent roll of, I don't know, a nice rent roll, maybe 20 times more than I get from Social Security right now, right? So, not a lot, but way more than I have now, right? And then when I died, I basically got rid of everything, pretty much sold it and gave it away to nonprofits and all kinds of, interesting. Oh, you need some money? Here's some money, right? And I, lived on what I had. I didn't make any more money. And I was on disability because I was so screwed up. So, and that's why I stayed in Virginia, because Roanoke had, the big medical monster came in. And so they had some good medical stuff there. And I had disability, so they were taking care of me. And I found some good doctors, and so I was taken care of. So they shepherded me from death into recovery, into getting stronger and losing all that weight, and they were there just in case. A number of times I would slip off the wagon, and I would get septic legs and things of that nature. And it's always good to have a doctor who you trust and has the facilities take care of you. So I had that in Roanoke for a good, 14. I left in 17. So that was my recuperation period. And then I found some pretty good doctors here. and they took care of them and still are. But after COVID, all the good ones quit. They just can't take it anymore, so they left. And so our medical, I mean, we spend more money on healthcare in the United States than any other country. Right? We spend more than all the EU does, and they're way up above. We're like number 36. You know, we're below Tanzania, right? Now, really, rich people have very good health care, but everybody else not so much. And if you are black and or you're a person of non-whiteness and or poor, you basically have no health care. So you have to, you have to be able to navigate it, which I know how to do. But I'm watching the whole system just collapse in front of my eyes, and so I'm pushing 80. I'm going to be here as long as God wants me here. That's about it. I died, you know, 64 in 2014, and I didn't stay dead. God wanted me to do so. I have no idea what it is, so I'm just doing my best. But it's interesting. So that Pepsi, that one Pepsi, and that one, um, you know, Hostess Twinkie, made in 1957, is like my body is like, oh, you're gonna die, and I'm my other side of my body is, oh, no, no. So it's just kind of, ooh. Yeah, so I won't do that again for maybe another 6 months. So my buddy, whose living room I'm sitting in, every time I come, he gives me a Pepsi. So since February, I've had 8 Pepsis. That's it. That's eight sodas since February. So yeah, I got a sugar high. Yep. So that's good. It's um uh, uh, ugh. So I'm about to run out of juice. Am I in the red yet? No, I still got a little bit more. So we've covered a lot of stories and subjects. Again, go back and watch my shows, and also put them on thumb drives. If you can download them, I would, because I have a sense that the internet is going to go bye bye relatively soon. So, um, I mean, maybe before Thanksgiving. Anyway, it's going to be, buckle up, kids. It's going to be quite the ride. But you have to realize that it's not a big deal. I mean, you could be in the Gaza Strip. You could be in Beirut right now, or you could be in Israel. Downey said, in 2 years, if I'm not president, Israel's going to be toast. He's right. I mean, see, that's the beauty of Downey. He lies so much, he tells the truth. It's like surreal. It really is. So anyway, there's 4 of you there. Come on, give me 4 thumbs up. I would stock up on toilet paper right now. I would say, I live kind of, I don't live, I have to go somewhere else to get on the internet, right? I don't have it at my fingertips. I do this mostly to talk to you guys up there. And so, that's kind of what it is. So go watch a little bit of Dark Journalist. He's getting pretty, he's always good for a good conspiratorial romp. And he's got a lot of good information. But again, don't believe anybody. Take whatever you hear and then go do your own due diligence. Go check it out. Don't believe any, the Fox News or MSNBC or CNN or any of that shit. Not to say you shouldn't look at it, but it's not worth listening to. Losing connection now. Well, the connection that matters is in your heart to love's co-creation. That's the only connection that matters. Any other connections irrelevant. Yeah, I might have had my hand over something. Who knows? But anyway, so any oh, I'm in the red zone. I have about 5 minutes. Anybody have anything interesting to say or watch world, but they will learn. Well, we all, we all need, we're all a single cell animal called humanity, and all our relations. We're all our relations. The fact that people can silo themselves, oh, you're the other, it's like they don't know they're being frigging manipulated, you know, they're being turned into the other. Every time you think that someone else is the other, that's not like me. You're being the other. You're being othered. Anyway, gotta go because my little laptop doesn't like it when it just dies. It takes a couple of days for the show to get put up. So I'm going to end now and stream. Yep. Love you guys. Talk to you later.